Hi there, and welcome to this webinar looking at the Petrel Mapping Module by Petrosys, otherwise known as the Petrosys map window within Petrel. And this webinar is going to take you through what this module looks like, a broad overview of the module, and show you some of the features that this module has in comparison to the standard map window within Petrel. So there's going to be a few PowerPoint slides to start off with, and then I'll go into a live demo to run through some of the key features of the module. The first slide just tries to answer the question why Schlumberger has partnered with Petrosys to produce this module. Now, the technical reasons for this were that a lot of the Petrel users were feeding information back to Schlumberger requesting additional features in the standard Petrel map window. They were looking for things like improved contour mapping with faults. So in the standard map window, you can display grids and you can overlay fault polygons, but they're looking for a more geologically realistic way to contour around the faulted horizon. So having the contours snap onto the edge of the fault polygon in the way that that represents the intersection more accurately. They're looking for performance and scalability. So particularly for people doing exploration workflows, they were looking to be able to map at different scales and for the performance of those different scales to be sufficient. They were also looking to be able to project maps into different coordinate systems. Typically, if you're working in exploration between UTM zones, for example, the current map window within Petrel is restricted to the CRS of the Petrel project, but the users were looking to map in different coordinate systems. They were also looking for better outputs, more modern formats, things like high-resolution PDFs that they could easily share with partners and engineers and other technical people who might want to see their maps. They were looking for better labeling and annotations. So typically what we would see people doing with maps from the standard map window would be to move those maps into other applications like PowerPoint or Adobe Illustrator in order to add labels and annotations, also while decoupling the map from the technical software, which is not very efficient. So they were looking for a better way to add labels and annotations. They're also looking for the ability to control the labels on the map as well. So where you get nasty overposting, particularly if you have a lot of well names labels on top of each other, for example, they were looking for a better way to move these around the map to display those more efficiently. They were looking for easier ways to create legends for use on their maps. They were looking for better flexibility with line styles, particularly for fault styles, so including fault text to show the up-thrown or down-thrown sides of the fault polygons. And also looking for a way to interact with the surface on the map, so better contour editing. And I would also just add fault polygon editing as well, where it's appropriate to do so. Now, the reason that Schlumberger partnered with Petrosys on this is that Petrosys is a leading provider of mapping systems in the oil and gas industry. So for over 30 years now, Petrosys has been developing subsurface mapping technology specifically for the oil and gas industry. So our mapping software understands the various challenges of subsurface mapping, understands things like well paths and what seismic navigation and interpretation looks like, and the various challenges that go with mapping these systems and working in various different depth senses, so TVD versus subsea, and working in two-way time versus meters per second. Lots of different challenges that you have mapping subsurface data. The Petrosys technology is already very well geared up to do this, and we've been in the industry at over 300 clients worldwide, providing high quality mapping software. So it made sense then for Schlumberger and Petrosys to partner together to build the high quality Petrosys mapping technology inside the well established Petrel software. So the Petrel Mapping Module by Petrosys, or as I mentioned earlier, just simply the Petrosys map window inside Petrel, delivers several benefits to different people. Firstly, it benefits users because as a user, you would spend less time creating high quality maps than you otherwise would with the standard map window. Therefore, you can more clearly share your technical information with whoever is going to read your maps. You don't have to outsource the mapping to another team or department. So all of the functionality that you have within the Petrel Mapping Module by Petrosys gives you all of the ability to add all of the geoscience information that you're looking for. So therefore, when you don't have to give the map to another team or department, it means you're not spending a lot of money generating maps, and it also means that your final map is not decoupled from the most up-to-date geoscience data and thinking within Petrel. I've heard a lot of anecdotal evidence where somebody has finalised a map in a different package like Microsoft PowerPoint, and then somebody simply asks for the map to be created at a different scale or including a new well that might be drilled, and they have to go through the whole process again. It's very costly, very frustrating when users are trying it, particularly at the moment, to be as efficient as possible. The companies benefit because the maps are consistently made to follow a corporate standard. So I'll talk about templates within the module when I show the live version. And these templates can be set up however a company expects all of their maps to be created, following certain styles or scales or extents. And therefore the company benefits because the people who are creating the map are making more efficient use of their time, spending more time doing the actual interpretation and the actual technical work rather than creating these standards or these different styles. The partners and regulators benefit because they receive the quality maps that they need to be well informed of the subsurface projects that are going ahead, and this leads to more efficient sharing of data and knowledge, basically using maps as standalone representations of the subsurface rather than having to have a lot of additional information provided with them. So this is what the module does. Now I'm not going to spend a lot of time going through these points because I'm going to cover them all in the live demonstration, and as part of the summary I'll come back to this slide just to make sure I've covered everything. So the module itself then allows for quality outputs, high resolution PDFs and images. It allows you to contour geologically accurately around faulted horizons. It allows you to edit contours and edit fault polygons and GIS data. It allows for overposting control, so it allows you to move labels on the map as to the preferred location that you need them to go to. It allows you to create maps in different coordinate systems. There's flexibility in terms of the level of detail control, so within a couple of minutes you can have a reasonably complete map, but if you want to spend longer on that map and really add some extra detail and annotations, there's that flexibility to do that as well if the map deserves that, depending on its purpose. There's the ability to add labels and annotations. There's flexibility in terms of the legend, quite easy to create legends within the module, and the standardization through the use of map templates. Now, for those of you that are familiar with Petrosys and perhaps have used the core application in the past, the core application, which has all of the Petrosys functionality, is known as Petrosys Pro. And this slide just tries to explain what you would find within Petrosys Pro, but you would not find within the Petrel Mapping Module by Petrosys. So the two key things then are, the first is the access to the Petrosys surface modelling algorithms. So the core application has a range of gridding algorithms and grid processing tools and gridding with fault sticks to convert into fault polygons and various other features like this and volumetrics. Or various other surface modelling processes. The other thing that it doesn't have is our unique third-party connectivity. So because the module is already within Petrel, it was decided that you wouldn't need to connect to landmark data or paradigm data or any of our other connections that we've written as well. So for those of you that are familiar with Petrosys Pro, those are the two key things that are not within this module. Really, all of the mapping technology, the map making functionality we have, all of that is inside the PMMbP. Okay, now I'm going to go into a live demonstration then. So let me just jump out of PowerPoint. And I have Petrel open here. And the data that I have access to today that I'm going to use for this demonstration is some exploration data. So I'm going to assume that I've interpreted some seismic data I've identified an oil water contact from a recent well that we've drilled, and I'm now going to make a prospect map to include in our report. I should also just point out that a number of the users of the system are focused on production environments rather than exploration. So as we go through the exploration workflow, I'll try to point out some of the features that are more suited to production mapping. But just to let you know, it's equally applicable to exploration as well as production. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open the module itself. So if I go to the window, you'll see that the Petrosys map window is already installed as part of Petrel. So the first thing to point out is that during the standard installation of Petrel, the Petrosys map window is already installed as part of that installation. So there's no additional plugins or downloads that you need to do. It's already installed. The only thing you would need to do is if you don't have access to a license, would be to contact your local Schlumberger representative to get access to a trial or to a full license version of the module. But the actual software is installed. So I'm going to open that up now. And when the map window opens, we'll see a fairly basic map layout is created initially. And as a user then, all you need to do is use the window in the same way you would use any other window within Petrel. So I'm going to go ahead and find a surface to get it started. There should be one under here. So I'll just toggle on top target in 2-way time. And you'll see it then appears in the separate display list and it appears on the map here. So the first kind of value proposition, really, the first reason for using this map window is simply that it looks and feels like any other map window, any other window rather, within Petrel. So a really low learning curve, really easy to get to grips with. The next thing I'm going to do is look at how we define the area of interest of the map. And to do that, I'm going to display some wells. So I'll toggle these on. And what we'll find is that the area of interest jumps to this sort of weird extent. And the reason for that is that I've created some dummy wells down near the equator. And I've done that so that you can see, or so I'm showing those so that we can see how the extent jumps when we have data displayed. So by default, the extent jumps dynamically to suit all of your data. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to toggle off these wells, just get rid of those, and it will jump back to the extent of the surface. And if I go up to the window and click on the Petrosys map window here, and I click on this modify template button, you'll see there's a really handy little button here that says automatically set extents based on data. And if I toggle that off, you'll see that the coordinates are now completely fixed for this map. Now I can change them manually here if I want to. I can also change the extent to a geographic extent or a rotated extent if I want to. And you can also see I can project the map to a different coordinate system. Now I'm going to come back to the template option a little bit later in the demonstration, but it's just to show you that by toggling this off, we're now fixed to this extent that I've created here. And if I go ahead now and toggle these wells back on, you'll see that the extent is now fixed. So it no longer jumps, it stays fixed to these coordinates that we've entered within the template. Now if I want to modify the extent a little further, there's some nice handy buttons up here under the resize map area. So I can increase the width and the height of the map by 10%, or if I click on this one by 100%. I can use the panning option, so it gives me a little hand symbol. I can click and drag the extent to where I need it to go. Or I can use the mouse wheel to zoom in or zoom out, and I can just right click or press the escape key to get rid of that tool. And the final one is resize interactively. So it's very easy to control the extent of the map. And the value of using this window for controlling extent is that once it is fixed, like I've done here, it's then no longer possible to accidentally change the extent or change the scale of the map. It is now completely fixed. So as I zoom in, I'm only zooming in on the screen. This extent is now fixed, ready for me to create my map. So I'm going to go ahead now and try to improve the display a little bit. Let me start by toggling off the well so we can see the surface that I've displayed so far. and I'm going to double click on my new display list in the center here, and this gives me access to the Petrosys mapping functionality where I can improve the quality of this map. The first thing I might do is look at the color fill tab, and I'll change some of the color fill things about this surface. So I might go in and I've filtered here for pastel color, so I'll just stick on a pastel color color ramp, and I'll just choose dynamic data and click apply, and we'll see that is then applied here. So we can create custom color gradients. You can also use the range of ones that we have with the software. And I would also point out for those people that don't like to use rainbow color ramps, that we have a range of the non-rainbow color ramps as well. So we can easily create those. And we're going to have an article about that out soon. So if you don't like using the rainbow color ramps, then don't worry, there's plenty of color gradients in there to choose from. Now I could start to do some more advanced things like apply translucency or change the colours based on a particular increment, but I'm just going to jump to the faults tab now, and I'm going to put some faults onto this surface. Now if I click this blue arrow, I'm going to get an error, but what I can do is go to my Petrel tree and find a fault polygon. Fault polygon set here, click on the blue arrow, and it drops it in there, nice and easy. So the other sort of value proposition is that in addition to just toggling things on, you'll also find blue arrows throughout the panels, making it nice and easy to find the data you're looking for, and you can then just apply the custom style you're looking for onto that. So let me just change the size of these fault ticks, and I'll click OK just now. And we'll see that. Now I could go back in and change the spacing of these fault ticks or change the size of them, but for a first pass I think that's okay. And with the fault polygons on here, if I click on one of these contours, what you'll notice is that the contours themselves don't just run straight through the fault, they actually snap onto the edge of the fault polygon. And the advantage of that is that the contours then use the Petrosys rendering algorithms to contour into the fault polygon in a more geologically realistic way. So we're not simply overlaying a fault polygon here, we're actually using the contouring algorithms to change the surface, how it interacts with the fault polygon. Now if I go back in and go to the final tab, which is contours, I'll just show you a couple of things you can do in here. So I can change the contour increment. At the moment it's set to 25. I'm going to put this to 20, and every 100th contour I'm just going to make a little bit thicker, and I'll stick on a label for it. Now I also mentioned earlier that I've identified an oil water contact, so it'd be a good time to put this on. Just remove this additional one, and the oil water contact is at 1813.45, very specific oil water contact, and I'll just put this in green and a bit thicker. And again, stick on a label. It's automatically picked up this is in milliseconds, but I don't need that for this map. And I'm going to click OK to that. And that will generate the contours on the fly. So another sort of value proposition here is that you don't need to generate these contour values ahead of time. You simply toggle on the value you need, even if it's very specific, like this one, which was down to the nearest centimetre, and it will generate that contour for you on the fly. Now with the grid displayed, I'm going to say that I'm quite happy with that, so toggle that off, and I'm going to have a quick look at wells just to show you that it's the same process if you're wanting to edit a different layer. So again, the process is double click on the layer, and you then get access to all of the Petrosys mapping functionality. So at the moment these well paths are in their Petrel colour, but if I want them in a different colour, I just have to click through these tabs and try to find out where I might want to make those changes. So in this case, if I want to change the paths, I'll find it under the paths tab. I'll just change the colour to a fixed colour, and you'll see in here we can switch between downhole values and subsea and true vertical values. All of these sort of things are in there. And I'm just going to toggle on some fault tops, toggle them on for the top tar, but again I could use the blue arrow. I don't have an awful lot of tops in this data set, so I'll just toggle that on, and I'm going to change the orientation to be orthogonal to the well path, and I think that's all I'm going to do here. So I'll just click OK, and we'll see those changes appear. Again, you can spend as long as you need in there getting exactly the the information you want on your map. Now the next thing I'm going to do then is to create the prospect outline. So if I toggle this on, I've got my all water contact, and down in the southern area here there's a nice prospect that I want to identify on this map. So I'm going to create that polygon, and to do that I use a tool called the Spatial Editor. So I'll just toggle on a couple of layers that I need to use within the editor. And when these are within my display list, I can then easily just launch the Spatial Editor. Now, one thing I'm going to show just before I go into here is just something that production teams might like to use GIS data for. So I'm just going to double click on this layer here. And if I go into the annotation tab here, you'll see that it automatically reads the attributes within the layer. Now, this GIS layer here doesn't really have many exciting attributes, but if you had a layer, a point data set or a polygon, for example, that had some more exciting attributes like porosity or production values, for example, we can easily manipulate the display based on those attributes. So I can toggle on the values, which is nice and simple. I can also filter by those attributes as well. So maybe I want to filter for points that have less than a certain value or more than a certain value, or in between a range of values. And I can also thematically map, which allows me to change the style based on an attribute. So if I had some point data that maybe represented permeability, for example, I could create an expression to colour points that were less than a certain value one colour, or points that were more than a certain value another colour, or do things like apply a gradient or a range of colours to those numerical values within the attribute. So a range of things that you can do with thematic mapping. I'll just cancel out of that, there's no need to show any of that just now. And I'm going to launch the Spatial Editor, which will allow me to show how we create the prospect outline. So I don't need that polygon there. Now I'm going to create the prospect outline in this area here, but before I do, let me just show you how this tool works and show you a couple of its features. If I zoom in on this fault polygon here, for example, it's got a rather sort of ugly, blocky nature to it. Typically fault polygons start at a very sort of pointed nature as the displacement begins. So I'm going to try to put that information onto this fault polygon here. I'm going to do it by using these icons down the bottom here, and I'm going to start by using this one, which edits the vertices of the fault polygon. So I can take this fault polygon here, I can move the value like this, I can also right click to get rid of that point, and if I use this icon here, I'd also be able to go in and change or delete the Z value if it was no longer applicable. I can also just use the eraser tool, and I can erase a part of that fault polygon, and I can come back in and redigitize that either by single clicking and dragging like this. If I just right click, that will get rid of it, or I can click several times and just draw that polygon manually. I can also then use the smoothing tool and just apply a bit of smoothing to make that a bit more realistic. And it's the same story for contours as well. So if I highlight several contours, just click on the contours first, I can take these contours and I can apply some smoothing to them, for example, or I might want to apply a bend to some of them, just make the edit circle a bit larger. So I can apply a bend to some of these contours. Now what I'll say is, in terms of saving these data sets, the GIS layers, so the layers that have the globe icon here, when you save those automatically overwrite the layer that you're saving to. But for the contours, if you save those, it creates a new contour layer within your input tree. So it would then be up to you as a user to use the make surface option within Petrel to make a surface from those edited contours. But that's enough of the contour and fault editing. Let me go in now to look how we create this polygon here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the prospect layer, which is the one I want to create. I'm going to click on the pencil symbol, And you'll see there's another option down here which traces the outline of existing shapes. So as you'll see on the screen here, the cursor changes now from crosshairs to a hand symbol. So when it shows me the hand symbol, I know that it's going to snap on to that shape, and you'll see that as I come up here, it's snapping on nicely to the outline of that oil-water contact. So I just need to click on the edge of this fault polygon. And as you're doing this, you can also zoom in at the same time to make it more accurate. I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time getting this perfect, but you'll see that it's roughly correct within a few clicks. And I'll just come up here and just close off that prospect outline. And there we go, within a few clicks we've got this prospect outline. I'm going to save the prospect outline to this layer here, and then I'll close the editor and I won't bother saving the changes to the contours or to the faults. And with this prospect outline generated, all I need to do now is simply double click on this layer here and just change the style. So in this case I'm just changing the fill style of the shape so that we can see it. Apply a bit of translucency, click OK a couple of times, and I've now got my prospect outline displayed on this map. So hopefully you've seen there, it's a very powerful graphical editor. Got a few more sort of GIS-like features perhaps than the standard ones within Petrel. So it's got things like easily tracing outline of objects, easily editing or creation of contours and fault polygons. So nice and easy to use. And now within a few clicks we've got a reasonably complete map that we could present to someone. Before we go ahead and do that though, I thought we would just finalise the map, so I'll get to show you some of the templates features that we have within the module. So I'm going to click on this layer down here which says templates, and I'll scroll down and find that I have created some corporate standard templates for my made up company. And these templates here are created using the modify template option. Once you've created them, you can then save them to the corporate standard, and if you have permission you can save and manage these corporate standards. So the first example I've got here is just a very simple PowerPoint example. So this might be something you include in a PowerPoint presentation. So I've just chosen this sort of yellow background colour, fairly basic scale bar, and a north arrow as well. And if I click on the hard copy, you'll see that for the hard copy example, I used a very similar background, but I've also included this sidebar area, or title bar area, as it's sometimes called, which has a more detailed scale bar with CRS information. Got my company logo and a title block with some extra information, and I've got this fairly basic dynamic location map. If I wanted to change this, I can simply go to modify template, and as I mentioned earlier, this is where we control the CRS of the map and the coordinates of the map. We can also control the page setup and scaling. So this template produces maps at a fixed scale of 1 to 12,500, but we can use different modes like on-screen modes only, which just have a relative scale. You could have a fixed page size if you need all your maps to go into an A4 report, for example, or you could have a fixed page size and scale if the scale and the size of the map is important, particularly used by companies who are printing large scales or plotting large maps out. And you can also go to the Style tab and control things about the layout of the style, the posting of the coordinates. You can have projected coordinates and or geographic coordinates. Just simply toggle on and off the ones you want there. I've got them both toggled on at the moment. In terms of just to show an example of this changing, I've got this yellow background colour. If I just change that back to white and click OK, you'll see the background style of this map should update to white. So the value of these templates are they're pretty easy to create. They're pretty easy to manage within this corporate standard manager if you have the relevant permissions to do so. So typically 1 or 2 key users at a site would set these up and then share these with everyone, so that everybody's just simply toggling on the templates they need. It means that you don't have to spend the time creating styles and coordinates. You can just focus on your actual data. One very last thing to point out about the styles is that this location map is very basic, and it's very basic because often when I'm doing demonstrations I'm not connected to the internet, so I don't like to rely on an internet connection. However, if you are connected to the internet, you can use Petrel Map Services as your background layer rather than this basic country outline layer. Okay, a couple of extra things just to finalise this map then. I'm going to show some layer control. So as I mentioned earlier, you have this separate display list. You can easily select a few of these layers, right click, create a group. Let's just call this the top target. So that could be my top target group. I could then have a separate layer for other surfaces I want to work on. And you can also drag layers up and down this list. So at the moment the wells are posted on top of this surface. If I simply drag those to the bottom, then those wells are then suddenly underneath. You can just make out some wells that stick out the side of this surface here. I'll put those back up to the top, but rearranging of layers and groups within the display list is very easy. It works very much like a GIS package in that respect. We can add some extra information in terms of colour bars. So if I look up the top here, there's some extra information that I can add to my map. Things like north arrow, scale bars. We can add colour bars. So I can add the colour bar here, or if I right click on a surface that has a colour bar, I can just toggle that on. So let's just put this onto the top left of the map area, and that looks okay there, but let me just draw it reverse so the red colours are up the top, and you can then start to manipulate it. So it says milliseconds down the side, I might just call this top target brackets 2 time or something, and then I'll click apply. You see all of that updates, and you can spend as long as you need on these sort of features. There's lots of options available. For example, there's a little coordinate tick just poking through the colour bar there. If I don't like that, I'll find under the style tab that I can put this colour bar in a nice white background. So I'm not going to go through every little feature that these tabs have, but just to show you, there's lots of styling options available, lots of things to tweak the map and get it looking exactly as you need. And as I mentioned earlier, you can spend as long or as short a time as you need on the maps. Within a couple of minutes, you've got a reasonably good map, and you can spend a bit longer really improving it if it's for a particularly important presentation or peer review or such. So that's the colour bar. Let me just go on to something else that's in here. I can display raster images. I can display the map base if I need these ticks on top of the surface here. We can also do drawing elements, so I can add ellipses and circles and boxes and labels as well. So if I need a label with an arrow pointing to a feature or a sort of speech bubble pointing to a feature, I can use the new label option here as well. I'll just close that down just now though. One of the features that a lot of clients like to use is the overpost correction feature. So I'll just zoom in and show you how that works. Anytime you have a label that's not in the location you want it to be, you can right click on that label and choose overpost correct. Now if I do that here, and if I just move this label up here, I could put it over here, or I might want to hide this particular one. So at the moment it's in purple to show me that will be hidden when I click OK. I'll move this one over here, and maybe this top here, I want it just in between these contours so we can see it a bit nicer. I don't particularly like the arrows here, so I'll just toggle that off so we don't see it. That's all looking a bit better to me, so I'm going to click OK and accept those changes. And those labels have now moved to where I want them. And as I mentioned, you can do it with any label, so if I click on the contours as well, if I don't like where these contour labels are, I can pull those up to a better location, so maybe I'll put it here. If I don't like the orientation of the labels, I can flip the labels over. So lots of options in there to control the labels as well. I'll just pull this label down here from the oil water contact, and you can also right click and add labels if you need a label in a particular location as well. So really easy to control that and get those labels exactly in the right position you want for your map. So the value of that really is that you don't need to make those sort of label changes, whether it's adding labels through this option here, or whether it's the ability to move labels. You don't need to do that in a separate package. You can do it all in here inside Petrel. Save your map. It's still all tied to your technical data. So if you need to update the data with if this surface updates, or if you've drilled a new well, just simply click refresh and it updates. You don't need to go through the whole process again. Really efficient way of working. Now, final thing to show is just the export to PDF. So there's various ways to get your map into other formats. You can obviously print maps. You can export to graphic formats like rasters or CGM formats. The export to PDF tends to be the most popular option. So I'll just go in here. I'll just choose the map size to fit to page. So I'm not interested in the scale of the map at the moment. I'm just simply printing out to the map size itself. Click OK and overwrite this. And now my map will open up inside Adobe Reader or any other PDF reader you might have on your machine. And when this opens, you can see that if I click on this icon here, I've got access to all of the layers. So I can toggle layers on and off. In this case, I've got the entire top target group that I created. But if I expand that, I can simply toggle the wells on and off, or the prospect on and off, or the surface on and off as I need to. And if I zoom in on the map itself, you'll see, if I toggle these wells back on, you'll see the over post correction changes that I made earlier. They're still being retained. And if I zoom in, you'll see there's no loss of resolution. It's a really proper vector format, so in terms of viewing the data, there's no problems there. So what clients tend to do is that for exploration workflows, for example, they would typically export the maps to PDF so that they could take the PDF into a peer review or send that PDF to a partner, and that person could then easily come in here and interact with the map and display maybe a range of surfaces, maybe a top structure map and a base structure map and a net to gross map or whatever it may be, and be able to interact with that within a single PDF rather than using having to use the same technical software. The other thing we can do with this is you can measure within here as well, because it is a vector format. So if I click on the Tools option within Adobe Reader, click on Measure, you'll see we get things like the Geospatial Location tool. So you'll see the PDF itself is geospatially aware. And if I click on the Measuring tool, hopefully you'll be able to, let me just go back down here. Hopefully you'll be able to see that as I hover over the well symbol here, it sort of snaps onto the well because it's this vector format. So I can snap onto that well, snap onto that one, and it gives me the distance and the orientation between those two well points. I'm working in miles here, but it's easy to change that into meters if that's what you needed. So very popular formats to get your maps out in. And that concludes the live demonstration part here. So what I'll do is go back to PowerPoint, and I'm going to finish with this slide just to make sure that I've covered everything that I had intended to. So first thing about the module then is you can produce your maps in these higher quality outputs, so things like the PDF outputs I've just shown there. You can contour more effectively in faulted horizons, so we saw how the contours interact with the actual fault polygons. You can edit contours, and as I showed as well, you can also edit things like GIS polygons and fault polygons as well. You can use overposting control to move labels to preferred locations on the map. You can project maps into different coordinate systems. There's the flexibility in terms of the level of detail. So as I showed, you can start with a map can be created really within a couple of minutes, especially if you combine it with the standard map style templates. You can create a reasonably complete map within a few clicks, and then it's up to you if you want to put a lot of detail in there. There's things like labeling and annotations, so showed how we can add labels and those annotations to the map. The flexibility customization of the legend. I knew I was going to forget something. Let me just jump back to that. So on this map here, one of the other things on here is the legend. Let me just click on that to show this option. The legend is created for you automatically, so it picks up all of the well symbols that I'm using, all of the status of these wells and what the symbols mean, and it's also picked up a few polygons that I've got on the map as well. Now, if I'm not happy with any of this, let's say I don't want those polygons on there, because maybe it's obvious what they are. I can simply delete those. If I need to change any information, maybe I don't like the number 3 there, I can simply change it there. And then you can go through these tabs, and maybe you don't like the dotted lines, so you can right click there, or you can choose a different line style or whatever it may be. And then you can go on to the next ones as well. So really easy to control these legends. And if I just choose this to title bar area, click OK, I've now got that legend on the map. So I knew I was going to forget something, but hopefully that's the only thing I've forgotten. And then the final thing is the standardization. The map templates are really powerful. Those can be set up by 1 or 2 people at a company, and then everybody can just use the same style. Saves everybody having to mess about with company logos and scale bars and coordinates and all that sort of stuff. So thanks very much. Rather than taking questions just now, let me jump back to the initial slide here, and you've got my details on the screen there. If you need to get in touch with me to ask any questions about this module, please do. But as I mentioned, it is a partnership with Schlumberger, so Schlumberger will be able to take questions on getting access to this module as well. Thanks very much. I hope you enjoyed it.